lasting impact. And today I have my special guest. He's a Salesforce multiplier who helps business owners restore forward motion by replacing chaos with clarity and execution. No other than Mr. Dominic Carubba.
Good to be here, Daniel. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Dominic on Entrepreneurship 101. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
Sure. So I started out as an entrepreneur very early in life, and I started a lot of business ventures. I was successful at a few of them. I was also successful at losing $1 million twice, and I did it within I really did it within 3 years, but I say I did it within 5 because it took a little startup time and a little recovery time to do that. But, from every failure is a seed for success, because if you're willing to learn and grow as an entrepreneur, you solve the problems for yourself as well as others in order to keep moving forward.
Yes, you need failure people to be better, to be the best, and to earn millions of money, or billions, or trillions, just
Sure.
like Mr. Elon Musk. So today, let's talk about Mr. Dominic. Let's talk about why smart business owners get stuck and how to restore momentum. And thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world.
Thank you.
Thank you. The Gateway survey found that 45% of failed founders ignored warning signs for up to 6 months, and 65% were too late acting on financial problems. They are not unintelligent people. They are successfully built businesses. So, what is the actual mechanism of this day? Not denial, but specific cognitive architecture that makes smart people last, admit their own model is broken.
Yeah. So the problem occurs. I was talking to somebody about this today, as a matter of fact, and I think the problem really occurs because as an entrepreneur, you typically start out alone, right? You have your idea alone. Before you share it to the first person in your life, it's you, and you own and control everything. And it's hard to see where our limitations are because, at least for myself, I look at it like, well, I know I can do it because I did it to this point already, right? So to the point of your first hire, to your first location, if you have one, or your first extension of what you're doing, whatever that first is, you did it up to that point. One of my mentors wrote a book called What Got You Here Won't Get You There, a guy named Marshall Goldsmith. And the challenge with that is there's lots of challenges, right? But you don't know you're stuck because you keep moving around and you miss the metrics, the things that show movement from a different point of view. And the way I look at it is like this. So this is one of my little debit cards, credit card, got it from Venmo, right? Good little company. You give a little. And if you think about your problems as an entrepreneur and what you provide as a service, think of it as fitting all on this card, right? And you can take a look at it, you can see it. But boy, when you're up like this, everything is huge,
Black,
and in your
yes.
face, and it looks bigger than it is, and we make problems bigger than they are when we don't put them in perspective. And perspective is the hardest thing for an individual to get, and we forget that we need perspective. You can only get perspective from other points of view. And humans don't typically let go of their point of view, especially when you're committed enough to start a business. You got to be committed to your point of view because that takes a lot of energy to start a business. Just to tell people I'm doing this thing requires energy. It requires commitment. It requires courage. And we don't think we're wrong when we do it, right? We don't Nobody says, how is this going to screw me 10 ways to Sunday? We think, how many ways can I make this work? And I've been, listen, I said I was successful at a few ventures. I was, but I also failed at a lot of ventures. And it's sometimes hard to distinguish the difference between the two. You said earlier, 47% of businesses quit because they didn't make changes soon enough. It's you need to make the change. And something's stopping you from changing. Sometimes you're changing too much. Sometimes you're not changing enough. So what does that look like? I don't have the answer. I don't know. Every situation's slightly different, but I guarantee you this. If
Certainly. So, go ahead,
things
Mr.
aren't
Dominic.
moving in the direction that you want them to go, and if you don't have a way to measure that, you'll never know if you're stuck or not.
Mm-hmm.
So
So,
does that complete the thought? Because I have lots I could say on it, but I don't want to go too far off on a tangent. I got a lot of
go
information.
ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Dominic. My apologies.
Well, no,
So
it's fine. I just listen.
Mhm.
I work with leaders and entrepreneurs and creatives to help them gain what I call momentum. And the first step of that is to break inertia. And inertia could be an object that's standing still or an object that's headed in a particular direction with a predictable destination. And in order to gain momentum, it really helps to have, like I said, perspective from others that can see where you are and where you're going better than you can see where you are, and where you think you're going might be different. So I say all that because my background is in systems. It's in building the CRM, the databases, the training, the enablement, all those things that enable businesses to operate. I have a background in all that stuff. And so there's lots of ways you can translate it. I don't purport to say I know the answer, but I do know things that work and things that don't. So as a new entrepreneur, the one thing I can say is the sooner you get perspective, the better. What you want to avoid is people who don't have a stake in your success. That is to say, they're not invested. So their perspective, you have to judge where and what you get your perspective from. So better to be in a group of people that share the same investment in your success as you do. I'm complete with that question, Mr. Lucas. Are you muted? Because I can't hear you right now if you're supposed to be talking.
Yes, thank you for that, Mr. Dominic.
Oh, we're
Very
having a
well
fun time.
said. Very well said. So, the Entrepreneur's article cites Napoleon Hill's warning from 1937 that success builds on mental force without inner coherence could turn destructive. You have founder who has succeeded through sheer will, hustle, and force of personality. At what point does will become resistance not to external obstacles but the internal reorganizations required for the next stage?
So let me see if I understand the question because your audio blipped out a little at the end.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll make sure I got it. Let me know if you hear it.
Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Dominic.
What I heard you say was entrepreneurs put a lot of effort into results.
True. Yes.
Those efforts can go in a lot of different directions while you're starting a company because you're the only one doing everything, and more effort is going to work to move you forward. That's just the law, right? Here's the thing I can tell you is how you know effort won't work. So um, there's a ratio, and I look at it through the lens of sales. I'm looking at it just through the lens of sales, right? Because sales is the only reason you're in business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're selling something, all sales follow the same development. That is, somebody who doesn't know you is the further, like those are the people the furthest away from you. Starts with getting to know somebody, getting connected, finding a prospect, right? Turning that prospect into a qualified prospect, whether it's a market, right? And then they're qualified to do business with you. You're qualified to do business with them. And then it follows a conversational development. And that development leads to either a yes or a no at a certain date and time, right? That's how every sale, I start a conversation, I match, I mirror, I do whatever I do until we come up to a decision. And then that decision leads to money. So here's the thing about it. Numbers are involved. That is to say, for every 10 people I reach out to, I'll have so many that respond. I'll have so many that talk to me. I'll have so many that, engage in the conversation, and eventually so many will buy. That, when you get to a point where you've got something working, right? You got something working. I heard it this way. Most businesses fail to scale because they attempt to scale at the wrong stage of their development. So in the first stage, you're trying to figure anything out to develop a pattern, your survival stage. Once you sort of figured out the way you get leads, the way you make sales, the way you fulfill on them, and that's a repeatable pattern, now you're in the sales mode. You survive your way to where you become and develop a sales process. Once you have that, then you can start to put in the systems required to repeat those processes reliably. And only at that point can then you add inputs to get more outputs. That is to say, if I double my leads, it'll double my sales. There's a one-to-one relationship. And that stops at some point. So at some point in your business, there's a one-to-one relationship to the number of inputs to the percentage of outputs. That's what I mean. So if I got 100 leads, I make 10 sales. The only way you know if your system that you were building needs improvement is you double the number of inputs. You go from 100 leads to 200 leads. And in the same time frame, if your systems are working and efficient, the number of sales will go up exactly the same until it stops. Until you put in 300 leads, and instead of getting 30 sales, you now get just 22 sales. And you put in 400 leads, and instead of getting 40 sales, you're getting 28 sales. That tells you that there's friction in the system. That tells you there are bottlenecks in the process. That tells you something is you're growing beyond your capacity. But you only know that if you pay attention to the numbers. You only know that if you have a reference point and you kind of keep good tracks of data. And that's why I believe in CRMs so much, because any of them will give you some indication of your ratios. And there's only a million different variables you have to adjust in order to improve it. And the challenge is finding that variable, finding the one variable that's going to move the needle, not on the input side, but rather to the ratio side of the output. And, that being said, it's a never, you said one of the things they don't do is make changes fast enough. They don't pay attention to the finances. They don't pay attention to the ratios. They don't pay attention to the people that are not doing their jobs. There's always something that if they were paying attention to it could make the difference in staying in business versus not in business. I'm complete.
Very well said. Very well said, Mr. Dominic. Definitely. You have a strategy that you got you to 5 million pound. You have a different strategy that might get you to 20 million pound. But the first strategy is proven, comfortable, and still producing some revenue. Vedia calls this as competency trap, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. A competency trap
Mm,
is, to me, what happens when you plateau or you're in a constant state of a pattern, whether that pattern is flat or whether that pattern is up and down or whether it's a slow rise and a slow fall. It's still a pattern. And the more you repeat a pattern, the more likely it is you'll repeat that pattern. Said another way, if you always brush your teeth with your right hand, try tonight and tomorrow morning and the next day to do it with your opposite hand. It's supposed to feel weird. It's supposed to be different. It's hard enough just to remember you said you would do it, much less do it and then get proficient at it. So when you are in a predictable, repeatable pattern, something's got to change in the system. Or you have to create a system to find, and by the way, the whole purpose of a system, the whole purpose of having a repeatable process is so you can find elements of it that you can improve, that are the bottlenecks. The bottleneck is usually the owner, the entrepreneur. They're their own bottleneck. And that's because you know you can get everything done. So you structure the world to be limited by what you can touch. And at some point, if your vision is to have a business that you separate yourself from, whether it's day-to-day operations separate, or you sell it to someone else and you separate, take the money and leave, the only way to do that is to separate yourself from the pattern so that you can align the behaviors with the outcome because you're looking at through your vision. I hope that answers your question. But competency will trap you because you know what works and you stop experimenting. Stop looking for something new.
very well said, Mr. Dominic. 76% of our founders at the growth ceiling still personally manage key client relationships. That is not a delegation failure, that is identity defense. What is the fear or benefit of unwillingness to hand over the client?
It's a great question, Daniel. What
Thank you.
what stops somebody from turning over the behavior? This is where my world really becomes. I spent a lot of my years as a corporate trainer, training, right? Here's the truth about training. Training doesn't solve your problems, which is probably why you think you're training people to take over your clients. But what you're really missing is the purpose of training. Purpose of training is to support the successful use of your systems. And again, it goes back to what Michael Gerber said in the E-Myth originally 35 years ago. You got to spend time on your business, not always in your business. And if and here's the lesson. It's hard for an entrepreneur to decide what's important. That's what's the hardest thing, because everything is important. I do the ADHD leader because in ADHD, all sound, all visual, all stimulus is right here. There's no depth perception. So the only way you as a leader can know if what you do is important or not, and that's to say, determine whether you should or should not be doing it. You want to know if what you do is important, stop doing it. If nobody complains, it wasn't important. So you literally have to take your hands off and be willing to let other people fail so you can learn not what's broken in them, not what you have to handle, but what part of your system do you need to re-engineer and redeploy so that the system, and all a system is a series of inputs, decisions, and outputs. So you know what to do when you get input A versus input B. And if you practice that and then you test it to see and you work it and you have to grow it, and every system's going to come to a plateau, and then you have to re-engineer it to go to the next level, but that's okay. That's what it's supposed to do. So if you're not letting 24%, if you're not doing what the 24% are doing, again, you're not focused on the goal of the business is to separate yourself from it. But remember, it's personal. It's your baby. It's the thing you risk everything for. You're spending more money on it. You could be working a job at any moment in time, making more money for the time you put in. So you're not a very good steward of your investment if you don't practice building systems so you can turn it over to others, because that's how you create a business. So I'm leaving it at that. And I like identity defense is definitely thinking you are the business. And if your business depends on you, you don't have a business that you can sell. You have a job that you have to show up for.
Indeed, you are the job itself. So, Mr. Dominic, the Gateway survey found that 62% of failed founders believe they would still be in the business if they had secure additional capital, and 31% of those who did not try crowdfunding wishes they had. This is not a story about unavailable capital, it is a story about untried doors. What is the funding conversation you have been avoiding?
What is the what conversation I've been avoiding? The founding?
The founding or the funding itself.
Oh, the funding.
Yes, the funding.
I think the conversation that stops entrepreneurs from getting funding is their belief that they can sell their way to the solution. That is to say, if I get more sales, that'll solve my funding problem. I know, because that's how I lost $1 million the first time. I sold myself out of business. I sold beyond my capacity. And it failed. And when it comes to funding, here's the thing. I'm not good at getting outside funding, because funding, to me, I'm not educated. And you avoid anything you're not educated about. I literally just started learning about funding at the end of last year, more so than I ever had before. Now I have self-funded, and that's how I lost a lot of money. And I do think it's always better to use other people's money, but in return for that, you're going to have to give them something of value. So if what I could say about funding is educate yourself, spend the money. But I can tell you this way, if you're definitely going to get funding, spend the money on the things that build the foundations of your business so that it actually works to grow your business.
Well, very well said, Mr. Dominic. Before we wrap up this discussion, can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Sure. So I've just started this project called Momentum. It's for leaders, entrepreneurs, owners, creatives, consultants, individual sales leaders, even. It's fine. If you're out for yourself, come to theadhdleader.com. Check out Momentum. We're creating an attractive and valuable space for owners and to get that perspective. Someone wants to own their sales, own their business, own their life. And if owners get perspective, they can make choices, take better actions, and learn and grow with others. And that's what we have. We have a great community of people committed to their success as much as each other's success. So break the inertia and join Momentum. That's what I would say.
Yes, break the inertia, people, and join Mr. Dominic Carubba. Yes. So I have one more question, Mr. Dominic. You have been stuck for 18 months. You have tried working harder. You have tried cost cutting. You have tried new marketing. None of these has restored momentum. At what point do you consider the possibility that the problem is not your execution, but your premise?
I'm going to say that your offer sucks. Either what you're offering isn't what, it's not what people want, or it's definitely not being presented the way they want to hear it. So 18 months is a great time. Here's the biggest lesson of that. Decide in advance how long you're going to give it to produce a particular result. That is to say, in 90 days, I'm going to get this result. And if you don't, or every 30 days, you can do it. Whatever you have to do, you have to constantly worry about your headline. In the world of advertising and sales, the biggest thing to change is not the copy below, it's the headline. The headline, the headline, the headline. And if the headline's not getting traction, back up and try something different until you find the headline that gets the traction you're looking for. Because if the bait ain't good, the fish won't bite.
Definitely, the fish will not bite. You should have a good bait.
Good bait.
Oh my goodness, the bait itself, Mr. Dominic. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And hoping for more and more, success to your business itself. So, Mr. Dominic, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you so much. More to come, people. See you soon.